Hey LitCampers, this is Pam Allen and I welcome you to LitCamp. Today we're going to be studying the strength of hope. This is the seventh of the 7 strengths. We talked about belonging, curiosity, friendship, kindness, confidence, courage, and now hope. Every one of our strengths has been building towards this one. This is a hard work to get to hope, and we did it. We've been working hard on our strengths. Today's strength of hope is a magical and illuminating strength. And we're going to hear from the great author, Andrea Pinkney, who's going to read to us from this incredible book, Martin Rising. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But first, the hello song. Hello, Chipster. Hello, campers. Hello, readers. We're glad to see you here. Hello, writers. Hello, storytellers. Hello, lit campers. We're glad to see you here.
Hello, campers. Hello, readers. Hello, writers. We're glad to see you here.
And for our song of the day, I want to sing a song that you probably know, you might have already learned, and if you haven't, it's really easy to learn it. Link campers all over the world sing this song, and they sing it in many different languages, and they always add their own song to it, or their own tune to it, or their own words to it, so you can do that too. That's the great thing. So this song goes like this. It usually goes, if you're happy, but today in honor of our strength, I'm going to say if you're hopeful. So it goes like this. If you're hopeful and you know it, clap your hands. If you're hopeful and you know it, clap your hands. If you're hopeful and you know it and you really want to show it. If you're hopeful and you know it, clap your hands. Try this one. If you're hopeful and you know it, shout hooray, hooray. If you're hopeful and you know it, shout hooray. Good work, Chip. If you're hopeful and you know it and you really want to show it. If you're hopeful and you know it, shout hooray, hooray. You could sing that song with older people in your family, younger, a little bit younger, or again, you could always just sing it to yourself, and you can add different things. So if you're hopeful and you know it, stamp your feet. If you're hopeful and you know it, pat your head. If you're hopeful and you know it and you really want to show it. If you're hopeful and you know it, shout hooray, hooray. That's my favorite one, is hooray. I love to shout hooray, and I love to shout hooray at LitCamp. Something we haven't done in a little while is some shooting stars. Shooting stars are when you can give someone else the compliment of something that you've been learning or something you want to teach someone else. So today, just at the beginning of LitCamp, I'm going to give you some shooting stars. And you can just grab those any way you want. And if you do some back to me, hey, I'll grab those back. Thank you so much. And you could do them with your own little flair. So let's settle in and listen to Andrea Pinkney read aloud from this incredible book called Martin Rising. She actually wrote the words to this book, Requiem for a King. The story is all about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm going to say a few words about him after Andrea's reading, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the uniqueness of this glorious book. And you can see all the incredible paintings in this book that were done by her husband, Brian Pinkney. So you can see that they work together, which is really cool. A lot of our LitCamp books are done in partnerships. The books are done not always by a husband and a wife, but by friends, by people who just found each other, or maybe their publisher found them, and they just go together really well. You see how amazing these paintings are. You won't get to see all that when Andrea reads to you today, but I'm going to show you a few more of those paintings when we come back together. So let's sit back and listen to Andrea. She's going to tell us a little bit about her meaning of hope, which I love. And then also she's going to tell us and share with us the final poem in this book, which is Martin Rising, Requiem for a King. Let's take a listen.
You know, I've been thinking a lot about the concept of hope, which is spelled H-O-P-E. And when I break down the letters, H to me stands for honesty. O stands for openness. P stands for positivity. And E stands for energy. In my book, Duke Ellington, about the famous jazz pianist, there's a line that says, Duke painted colors with his band's music. And to me, that's the E of hope, which stands for energy. In my book entitled With the Might of Angels, hope comes to life when Dawnie, the main character, wakes up one morning and says, the sky peeled open to let in the sun. And in my book, Martin Rising, a collection of poems about the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the final poem says, can a dream ever die? A burst of sun replies, his life well lived for peace and good, Martin's spirit still alive, and with love we all shall rise. These words from my books are reminders that even in the darkest times, hope shines as bright as a new day filled with the honest, open, positive energy of a bright blue tomorrow. To me, the greatest hope of all comes through so many stories, reminding us that hope is always here, deep in our hearts. And when I read a book and then share that book with a friend, hope grows like a flower that makes the whole wide world a beautiful place for you and for me and for we. Here's another poem from my book. Children rise as morning dawns, greeting the sky, a rolled out pie crust, so much golden hope on the horizon, so much light. Yes, here it comes, sun, sun, gladness fills every pocket of every giggle, shared by boys and girls of every complexion. Hope abounds before our eyes.
Thank you, Andrea. I loved how Andrea talked about hope. I love how she made her own poem out of hope. And I also loved how she read aloud from this poem. So today, when we talk about hope, to me, hope is a really powerful force in my life. When I wake up in the morning, I think about what I'm hopeful for that day. It might be something really immediate, like I'm hoping for a nice warm breakfast that I might have to make myself. And I'm also having a hope that might be something really much bigger, something for the world. I'm hoping that the world is healthy and peaceful. And I think by putting hope into the world, you are actually doing something very good for the world. So that's something you can do on your own. When you wake up in the morning, have a moment for hope. That's something you can do. A moment of hope for yourself that you can make happen in that very day, and a moment of hope that might take a little longer to accomplish, and maybe it's a moment of hope for others in the world too. But hope is a feeling of something is possible, something good is going to happen. A feeling of hope is a dream. It's something that you're hoping for. And in this book that Andrea read from, called Martin Rising, Martin Luther King Jr. was a very important person in our American history. He was hoping for a world in which brown children and black children and white children could all be together in a way that was very, very deep and is very, very special. A way in which there would be no barriers between us, in a way that we could all walk together, hand in hand. He really had that dream, and he did a lot of hard work to try to accomplish it. And in this book, she talks about, Andrea does all these different poems that talk about the different parts of Martin's life. Some parts were really hard, where he was fighting for that justice, and he had to march with other people. He had to really stand up for what he believed in. He used all the 7 strengths. He was confident, he had courage, he made friends with a lot of different people who helped him along the way, and he helped them. He also had some curiosity about how could we make this world different? Could we give better pay to everybody? Could we make sure that people who go to work get treated well? Could we make sure that little children who go to school will all get books and access to equal things? All of those things, what Martin Luther King was saying, were really hopeful things. But also being hopeful doesn't mean that we have to accept things as they are. Being hopeful meant that Martin sometimes really had to struggle and he really had to stand up for things. So I think courage and hope really go together. But I also think what's great about what Andrea read to us today is that hope is also about children. It's about you. It's about actually doing things and having action that feels maybe simple, whether it's singing or making a poem or walking to school, or if you're inside your house and stuck in your home, there are things that you can do to be hopeful just by reading and experiencing words and the power of stories. So one of the things I'm going to do today to bring the text to life is I'm going to give a little bit of an oral storytelling to this book and to these poems, just like Andrea did. But I'm going to almost talk back out to her. So she read this poem, and I'm going to ask you to try the same thing at home, which is instead of just to listen, I'm going to ask you to say it back to me in your own way. And again, if you feel like you'd rather not, like Chip is real quiet, he'd rather not, but he's going to take it all in and he's going to bring it all out. So you can do the very same thing too. You don't have to say it out loud, but if you want to, you can. So I'm going to just read part of this poem and I'm going to really try to live into it. Andrea wrote, so much golden hope on the horizon. And I'm going to say that with expression. And then she writes, so much light. So everybody together, so much light. And even maybe I'll do a hand motion, because when you're doing oral storytelling, sometimes hand motions feel really good. And then she writes, yes, here it comes. She means the light. So we can say, yes, here it comes. And that'll be my hand motion. Here it comes. And then she writes, sun, sun. You can do that too. Use your own hand motions if you want. Sun, sun. So let's read that whole thing back. And I'll say 2 lines and then you say 2 lines. So much golden hope on the horizon. So much golden hope on the horizon. You guys. Then she wrote, so much light. You can do it too. Good. And then she writes, sun, sun. The children are running around. You can try it too. Sun, sun. Try it. Awesome. Let me read it all together. She's imagining the children. She writes, children rise as the morning dawns, greeting the sky, a rolled out pie crust. She's imagining the sky is like a pie crust. Remember when we talked about courage and Lauren's books, we talked about how she uses similes? Well, so does Andrea. She compares the sky to a rolled out pie crust. Out they go, dressed in ribbons and bow ties, patent leather toes, and their knees all greased. And here we come to those lines. So much golden hope on the horizon. You can say it too. I love oral readings because then I can memorize the story and the poem. Then so much light. So much light. And then she writes, yes, here it comes. Sun, sun. You try. Great work. Bringing the text to life actually gives me a sense of hope. When I read that, I kind of embody the words and I feel a sense of hope just thinking that this idea that Martin Luther King was having this vision of children together, that's a hope I have too. Have a hope in your mind as you read aloud or you read to somebody in your family today. And if you can, remember, so much light. Yes, here it comes. Sun, sun. When I feel my reading power, I always am feeling a sense of hope for myself as a reader. I'm thinking about how I'm hopeful as a reader and that I can imagine setting goals for myself as a reader. So today when you're reading, I want you to be thinking about a goal that you could set. Now the word goal means I'm having an aspiration, I'm having an idea, I have an aim. So for example, my goal for myself as a reader today is to read for a full hour. Just a full hour. It can be anything. It could even be like different things. It doesn't have to be just this one book. but it could be that I'm rereading some of these poems that Andrea wrote. I'm also maybe just browsing through a newspaper or looking online at an article that I want to read, but that I have my intention is I want to read for a full hour. That's one hope I have today. I want to make sure I make the time. The second hope that I have today as a reader is that I hope I'll be moved by what I read. So actually, I've already accomplished that because I just did that with you, and that is in the Bringing the Text to Life. I actually did find myself feeling very emotional as I was reading these lines because I thought about how the dream of Martin Luther King as one of our heroes is that we still have a lot of work to do on that dream. I don't think that all children just get to go play every day. I think it's not so easy sometimes for children, and I want to make sure the world is a better place for them. So my hope is still growing. And by reading this book, it makes me remember that that's a hope I want to keep working on. So my hope as a reader today is that I will be moved by what I read, that it makes me have emotion. So those are my two hopes as a reader. When I ask you to think about reading power and your own power in your heart today as a reader, I want you to be setting a goal for yourselves as a reader today and feeling that sense of hope. And also for our power as a reader today, I talked a little bit about the way that Andrea writes. In fact, you might have noticed this, but she uses a lot of cool repetition. So today in your reading, think about cool repetitions. Are there places where writers are repeating? It doesn't have to be a poem. And actually, in many different types of writing, you'll see authors repeating certain words or phrases. In fact, in Lauren's book, in her Courage book, she says, all for one and one for all. And that's a line worth repeating. If you don't have any repeating lines in the books that you're reading, when you go back to your own reading and you feel that power, then think about where could an author repeat a line? What line did you just love that you would want to have a cool repetition for? Today our repetition was, sun, sun, yes, here it comes. And I love that. I think that's a real good metaphor, a real good way to think about hope, is when we repeat the words, when we repeat a sentence, we're actually saying, I'm going to underline that. It's that important to me. I want to remember it. I want to feel hopeful about it. Lit campers, let's feel the power of words. The power of words is so hopeful. So when I think about my writing power, I think about the power of words and stories that have inspired me. Just like this book by Andrea, where she talks about Martin Luther King, the hard times and the good times, the hard times and the hopeful times. Today, as a person with writing power, I want to be inspired by Andrea. I want to think about what she's done to tell a story through poems. And today, our last day of LitCamp, I want to talk about how we can use the power of hope to inform and inspire our own writing. I'm going to take and do something here that I often do as a writer, which is I borrow gently Andrea's inspiration. And I thank her for that always. She's one of my great inspirations. So one of the things that I want to do today is at the end of the poem that Andrea read to us, she wrote this, hope abounds before our eyes. And then in that last poem she read, she wrote, and with love, we all shall rise. And so I love both of those lines. So I might decide to take one of those lines, and I'll read them again so you can decide. And again, if you just want to draw, you can do that too. But I take a line and I'll put it at the top of my page to write my own poem. And when I do that, I get inspired to write my own hope poem. And so today what I want to say is, as writing power, I'm going to take the lines that Andrea wrote, I'm going to pull one and put it at the top of my page, and I'm just going to write off that line. Writing off a line is a great thing to do. And if you prefer picture books, you can actually just take a picture, copy it from the page, put it at the top of your page, and then write off that. If you're writing on a computer or a tablet, you can still do that. You can even just draw on it, or you can describe the drawing, or you can actually just take that line from the story and put it at the top of the page or the poem. So today we're really looking at poems. What Andrea did here is very poetic. So she wrote at the end of this poem, hope abounds before our eyes. The word abounds means it's like blooming. It's incredibly blooming. It's everywhere before our eyes. I think I'm going to take that one, but I'm going to read you the other one in case you want that one. That one goes, and with love, we all shall rise. And with love, we all shall rise. Again, you can make that as a picture or you can write that as many words. I loved how in her sharing with us, she talked about how hope grows like a flower. And I think that's what happens with words and stories and pictures and poems. So I'm just going to write down, hope abounds before our eyes. See? And then I'm going to take just 5 minutes to actually just write off that, to think, where is hope abounding before my eyes? First of all, I already know I'm going to write about you, Lit Campers. I'm going to write about how you being with me makes hope abound before my eyes. I'm going to write about that. I'm going to write about how my imagination makes hope abound before my eyes. I always loved to have my imagination as my company when I was a kid. It's why I can pretend about Chip. I'm not afraid to do that. My imagination also has helped me create a lot of things. I created LitCamp with my imagination, and then it became real. Hope is about turning something for your imagination into reality. That's really the definition. So something you imagine today, like having a better day tomorrow, that isn't just your imagination. Or playing a game, or playing with your brother or sister, or just playing by yourself. Play is really important. Anytime you play, that's really part of building hope. So always feel that you should be able to do that. So today, just real quick, we're going to write a poem about hope. Mine is inspired by Andrea. Hope abounds before our eyes. So I'm just going to write a little bit about you, Lit Campers, my Lit Campers. I'm going to write a little bit about my childhood and play. And I'm going to write a little bit about the sun, because Andrea talked about it, and that inspires me. And I really like that. And how in the sun, I get up very early in the morning, and I see the sun again, and it's just orange and yellow, and a little bit of purple even, and I feel a sense of hope too. It's another day. So I'm going to write that. Poems are really fun to write. You don't have to stay in the lines. You don't have to even write more than one word on a line. I liked what Andrea did when she said sun. Sun. So I might end with lit campers, lit campers. I like that she repeated that. So you try it. Today, when you have your time to do writing power, I want you to do a couple things. Take hope abounds before our eyes, or the second line, we all shall rise. And try to write a poem off those lines, one or the other, or even both. Hope abounds before our eyes. Today we studied hope. Hope is a beautiful thing to study. Hope takes work and time, but also hope is something you can have every single day. I think a big part of hope is gratitude. Hope is about feeling grateful when you look out the window, or when you just see somebody cooking in the kitchen, or when you know that you're going to see your friend again. Hope is feeling grateful, and I'm grateful for you. So today, when you go to your bunk time, when you go to explore on your own the books that you're reading, I want you to be thinking about yourself as a hopeful reader. That idea of being hopeful as a reader means even if it's hard today, it's going to get better tomorrow. And if tomorrow still feels hard, you can still be a hopeful reader by saying the more you practice, the better you get. Also, hope is about saying you don't have to do everything at once. Hope is about taking small steps that add up to something big. So when you think about reading today and you think about being a hopeful reader, I want you to do a couple of things. One is, don't be hard on yourselves. Hope is about being kind to yourself. That's one of our other strengths, kindness. We talked a lot about that. But hope is about being hopeful about yourself, not wanting yourself to be different. I don't even want you to change. I actually love you as you are. I guarantee I do. But it's more about just feeling hopeful about yourself, that inside yourself you have these strengths and you know that you will fulfill them. So when you're reading today, you might just be browsing through the pictures. You might be reading just the funny parts. You might be sometimes skipping a little bit of the hard parts. But when you're hopeful, it gives you a lot of strength and it helps you go into the hard parts a little bit more. So try that today as a hopeful reader. Nothing bad can happen to try the hard parts. So today, be a hopeful reader who tries the hard parts. And then the second thing I want you to try in bunk time, on explore on your own time today, is I want you to make a plan. Make a hopeful plan for yourself as a reader, for your family as a reader, so that maybe during this time today, you can actually read aloud to someone in your family, or you can simply just express that sense of hope to the family that you had a really good day as a reader. Sometimes I think just by putting out that positive intention, we actually get stronger. Just by saying, I think today's going to be a great day for me as a reader. How about you all? And see what everybody says. That's what I'd like for you to do during that time that you're an independent reader today, that you are a hopeful reader. We're coming to the end of our hope time today at LitCamp. Remember at the beginning I sang a song, if you're hopeful and you know it, clap your hands. Remember? Now we can sing, if you're hopeful and you know it, read a book. If you're hopeful and you know it, read a book. If you're hopeful and you know it, and you really want to show it. If you're hopeful and you know it, read a book. That's something good to model for others. Today, as I send you off in our Basecamp, I want you to think about everyone around you. It might be your family, it might be your caregiver, it could be maybe you're thinking about someone at school, a teacher, a friend, or maybe you're at school. But what I want you to be thinking about is this. I want you to be thinking about how you pass a message of hope to someone else. And then also how you become a listener of hope from someone else. And here are the ways you can do that. You can pass a message of hope by one, singing a song. That's easy. You can also just even make like a hope poster or put like a hope post-it up on your fridge. You can also simply just, at the end of the day, when everyone has a little more time, or if you're sharing a message with a friend from a distance or your teacher, you can say, I feel hopeful because, and then finish that sentence. I feel hopeful because. It's amazing that when you do that, it can actually raise the spirits of someone else. And that's what really Basecamp is all about, is how can you raise someone else's spirit? And then finally, stories are always about hope in some way, shape, or form, even the hardest story. So today you can ask a family member or a friend or your teacher or someone in your life that you connect with, a neighbor, somebody, you can ask them for their story of hope. It might be something from their childhood. It might be something they're imagining for the future, maybe an imagination story. Remember I talked earlier about how I've always had a big imagination. It's how I made up LitCamp. It's how I can talk to Chip. It's how I always made incredible games growing up. Everyone wanted to play because I always had ideas. I always had ideas that I could just make up. And that's a big part of hope. I'm not saying those things aren't true, but your imagination is the first place to start. So when you play today, or when you ask your sibling, your brother or sister to play with you today, be thinking about that. Can you create a world that might come true someday? Can you build with your toys that in a way that might become true, or your video games? Whatever you're playing with today, make that part of your hope plan. That's all good. Play is a big part of hope. So we're coming to the end of today's LitCamp. We're coming to the end of our discussion about hope. But hope is amazing. And the poet Emily Dickinson, she said, hope is the thing with feathers. Sometimes I look in the sky and I think, how can it be that a bird can fly? That's like amazing. But the thing is, that's really happening. And then some amazing inventors came along and watched birds fly, and then they made planes. So planes are flying too, even without feathers. So think about it. Your imagination, somebody who's hopeful and thinks that some idea they have could come true, that's what it means to be hopeful. Hope is the thing with feathers. So let's come to a close and let's sing together. Let's sing together our so long farewell song. And as we do, let's think about this hopeful world. I know sometimes life is not so easy, but when it's not so easy, I want you to have that hope. I want you to feel playful in your mind. Have your mind free to play. Have your mind free to explore. Have your mind free to do the things Andrea talks about that Martin Luther King did, which is he visualized a beautiful world. When you're asking your family or friend or teacher for that hope story, ask them to visualize with you a beautiful world. Sun and sun, Andrea wrote. Let's make the sun come out. So long, farewell, goodbye, my friends. So long, farewell, goodbye. We'll see you soon again, my friends. So long, farewell, goodbye. I have faith in you. I have hope in you. I know you have courage. I know you're building your confidence. I know you're thinking curiously about the world. I know that together as LitCampers, we create a sense of belonging. I know that you share kindness, the kindness in being together with me right now. And I know that together we are, as LitCampers, all friends all around the world. And finally, that sense of belonging that we create in LitCamp, you can take that with you wherever you go. That's always with you. LitCampers, you're awesome. Shooting stars. Bye.
So long, farewell, goodbye, my friends. So long, farewell, goodbye. We'll see you soon again, my friends. So long,